Hello everyone and welcome into another edition of School Talk here on May the 11th. I'm Clay Abels, your host of School Talk here today, live from the WJHI studios, as we're going to talk with our superintendent, Mr. Mark Laughner. Mr. Laughner, how are we doing today, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me, Clay.
Excited to have you in. I know we're going to start a little bit where we left off last time talking about transportation. That was a major point of emphasis for you, trying to solve some of the transportation issues. We've had a lot of success, especially here in the last few weeks, Jeffersonville High School, helping to mandate that. You see a lot of great emails every day where all bus routes are cleared and good to go. Tell us a little bit about how you've been trying to solve that problem and what some of the solutions you've been able to create.
Well, obviously, one big thing is advertising, to hire new drivers, whether it's social media, some of the other job listing sites like Indeed and some of those places, trying to find drivers. And we've had some good fortune in doing that. We've found a few drivers that are going to come online here soon. That's helping us out. Word of mouth also. Daniel Borders does a great job of talking to different contract, owners that maybe have friends that are working, in Kentucky or somewhere else that are ready to do something else. And so we're talking to everybody and anybody in terms of trying to find drivers and chauffeurs and monitors and things like that. And we've had luck. I mean, we feel like right now we're in a good position. We still have a few drivers that are on medical leaves, but right now we have enough sub-drivers to cover all the routes, and we hope that we get through the next 2 weeks into school without having to cancel routes. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It may happen if we have some drivers call off sick or something like that. But right now things are trending in a really good direction. We're also looking at next year in terms of doing some efficiencies with our routing to where we don't need as many drivers, but we can still pick up the same number of kids, which will help us in the long run in terms of making sure all our routes are covered. So we feel like we're in a pretty good position as we move forward.
And that actually leads me to my next question when you talk about routing. I know you've mentioned that before. Daniel Borders mentioned it when he came on School Talk. Some potential changes to routing and efficiency in all that area. When do you plan on making announcements, and what are some of the ideas you all been working on to make things more efficient going forward?
Well, some of it is just, we didn't want to look at expanding the no transportation zones. That's one thing we did not want to look at. But, could we have some kids maybe walk 3 blocks instead of 2 blocks to get to a stop? If you do that, that helps get more kids on a bus at a stop. Makes that bus route more efficient. The other thing we're looking at are times. When does Jeff High start versus the elementary start? And if we just change that by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that, that gives us more time to run routes between dropping off kids at Jeff High and the middle schools and secondary schools versus going and picking up the elementary schools. So that allows you to be more efficient, and you need less drivers. So we're looking at all those things, and once we finalize that, we'll communicate that out to students, parents, teachers. If we adjust the start times at all, we want to make sure we don't mess with the drop-off times, for parents, like the car drop-off times, because we understand parents still have to get to work, and so if we adjust that at all, we're not going to change the time that parents currently have this year in terms of dropping off their children for school. That's one thing we don't want to do. We understand that could be a situation. But we're looking at all those things. We want to make sure we are as efficient as possible in picking up students and running our routes.
So I want to transition to this and touch on the topic of graduation. We only have a few weeks of school left now, then we get into graduation for, obviously at the high school level, we have New Washington, Charlestown, and Jeffersonville. In terms of parents, students, everybody in general, what is some of the information and details people need to be aware of going into graduation? I know you're going to speak in all those, and now we're back to having people at graduation. So give us a little bit of information that people need to keep up to date with on the graduations.
Yeah, our high schools do a great job of graduation. Typically each ceremony, you have New Washington that lasts about 45 minutes, Charlestown lasts usually right at an hour, and Jeff High usually lasts, about an hour and a half, something like that. So they're great ceremonies. Typically, especially at Jeff High, parking's always an issue, and we run shuttles, and now that we're out of COVID and we'll have probably more people in attendance, we'll have that set up to run those shuttles and make sure people get in and out. Especially at Jeff High, because of seating capacity, there's limits on tickets, and so that's always an issue, so that parents need to stay on top of, make sure they're talking to their child about tickets and getting the tickets they need. I think typically Jeff High, they get 4, and the parents need to be on top of that. Sometimes those communication lines between student and parent aren't always
5 people show up, 4 tickets doesn't work well.
Yeah, aren't always that great. And so we look forward to having great ceremonies, celebrating our graduates, and I think, like I said, our principals do a good job of putting things together, plans in place that really celebrate, our graduates and what we do in Greater Clark. But there are some, protocols, policies we ask parents to follow and students to be respectful of the ceremony, and the air horns and things of that nature. Try to keep those out of the gym, and just be respectful of what we're trying to do on graduation day.
For graduation dates, New Washington, Friday, June the 10th at 7 p.m., Jeffersonville, Saturday, June 11th at 10 a.m., and Charlestown High School, Saturday, June 11th at 1 p.m.
Yes.
One thing to go with that is, going forward, you have the option. I know with COVID, so many things have changed. It looks like going forward, correct me if I'm wrong, at a school like Jeffersonville, you're going to see the option of a walk-in graduation where you can come in day before and just have you and your family members and schedule a time, and then you have the traditional ceremony. Is that something you think you guys will do long-term? I mean, what's the plan process on that?
I am open to that. Actually, we're leaving that up to our principals in each school. One thing that came from COVID and the COVID graduations, I guess you would call them, is the feedback we got from a lot of parents was that they liked that type of graduation where they could come in with their child, sort of walk through the ceremony, get some really good pictures.
Works better with the work schedule,
yep,
obviously.
And then they were done, and they didn't have to spend 2 or 3 hours at a graduation ceremony. So I'm certainly open to that as a superintendent. We're leaving that up to the principals because we had feedback from a lot of parents that said, hey, we like that. Can we continue to have that option, to sort of have that walk-through graduation, get it done pretty quickly, still get pictures and still be able to celebrate the occasion, and so we're very open to that.
Here with Mark Laughner, our superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools, on May the 11th with School Talk today, another socially distanced production from the WJHI studios, talking about transportation, graduation. Now we're going to transition into facilities. I know we spent a lot of time talking about year 1 and year 2 of the facility plan. Tell us a little bit about year 3, and when does that officially start, year 3 of the plan?
Yep. Year 2, we've sold the bonds last week. We sold them earlier than we typically do because of interest rates. The Fed has basically promised that they're going to continue to raise interest rates over the next
for everybody.
6 to 8 months. So we wanted to get in the bond sell in before that. So we're currently working hard on year 3. Year 3 of the facility plan. There's several smaller things that are involved in year 3, such as HVAC, roofing, paving, those type of things that are almost in every year of the plan. The 2 big items are we have to address Jeff High's pool situation. That pool's 50 years old. There's been no renovations on it in terms of the mechanicals, the pumps, the pool facility, the tank, any of that. And so we have a pool facility being done right now, a pool feasibility study being done right now that'll be completed by June, that will then push us down a path to either renovate that pool, the current pool, or build a new natatorium. We'll also have cost estimates with that pool feasibility study. I think right now, if I had to guess, just because of what's going on with inflationary costs and expenses, that it would be more practical and more feasible just to build a new natatorium. The cost of renovating that current pool here at Jeff High and trying to expand it from 6 lanes to 8 lanes and all the work that would have to be done to do that would be more costly than building a new natatorium.
Similar to we talk about building new schools, it's more expensive
Yeah.
to renovate than to build.
Yeah. So, we'll continue to study that over the next 2 or 3 months and make a decision as we get closer to the end of the calendar year. Probably November, December, we'll make a decision on which direction we want to pursue, whether it's a total renovation or build a new natatorium. But that's a big thing for here at Jeff High, because the other thing that if we decide to go down the path of building a new natatorium, then the question is, all right, what are you going to do with the old pool space? Well, our thoughts is that if we build a new natatorium, if that's the direction the board decides to head, then we could potentially convert that old pool space into a wrestling space, which I think would be great. Danny Struck does a great job with the wrestling program here. Not only would we be upgrading and helping our swimmers, it also would be a fantastic thing for our wrestlers. So we're looking at that option too. How do we build that into this potential facility improvement? And so there's still a lot of decisions yet to be made, but we're looking at that for Jeff High. That's the big thing in year 3. Also in year 3 is something has to be done with Parkwood Elementary. It's about 60 years old. It's a facility that needs upgraded. We have a lot of issues that we deal with over there all the time. It's a very costly building to operate because of the HVAC problems, roofing problems, electrical problems, sewage problems. I mean, it's just on and on and on. And it's time to do something. It's been put off for too long in this corporation as far as doing something with Parkwood. And once again, it becomes a decision-making process. Do you do a total renovation that we've been told is probably going to cost around $20 million, or over, depending on how inflation goes, or do you try to just go ahead and build a new building? And we have to make that decision over the next several months. But that's part of the year 3 plan too, is to address Parkwood Elementary, whether it's a total renovation or try to do a new building built around the 4 new classrooms that were built 4 or 5 years ago there. So to me, it's exciting stuff. I can't reiterate enough that we can do this work and we're not going to raise the tax rate on our community, on our property owners. We can do this work and keep the tax rate at $1.10, whether it's the pool, Parkwood, the 2 new elementaries, things we want to do in the future, because our assessed value continues to grow and because we have debt being paid off. We can do these projects and the tax rate will stay at $1.10.
But before I ask you about the tax rate, because I do want to ask you about that, with the Jeff High Pool and Parkwood Elementary, what is timetable for you in terms of you hope to have a decision? I know obviously it takes years to build a pool and it takes years to build a new elementary, but what's timetable hopefully for you and the board of saying, hey, this is the direction we're going?
We hope that the board will take action on it sometime December, January, February, where the board, we have to have hearings, of course, and the board would have those hearings somewhere in that time frame. And then we move forward with, the bonding, the design. Obviously, the pool feasibility study will give us a design, so we'll have that ready to go. But typically, you're right, to build a new elementary, to build a new pool, it's an 18-month to 2-year process to do it. Like our new elementaries that we're building in Jeffersonville and Charlestown, we hope that they're ready to open in school year 24-25. That's when we hope that they'll be done and ready to have students.
Now I know, again, this gives us time to go into the tax part, and I know you just went into that a little bit. How do we, because when people see just on the surface, they see a $30 million building or they see, X amount of dollars for this, and they're like, well, how do we keep our tax rate the same at $1.10? Tell us a little bit about how that process with bonding and all the work that you guys do, how do you keep that tax rate there even though you're doing big projects?
Yeah, and some people hear it referred to as the levy, the tax levy. Our school tax levy is $1.10. It's been that for the last 3 years, I believe, and we're committed to keeping it at $1.10. But there's a lot of factors that go into that in terms of the net assessed value of all the property in our school district. But then you also have to factor in tax caps, and the circuit breaker. That plays a role in all that. So one of the things that's happening in Greater Clark is we have all these new homes being built, new industry coming in, but also assessed values are going up because property values are going up. I mean, everybody has seen what's happened to home prices over the last year and a half, which drives up your assessed value. And so all that allows you, all that increases your net assessed value, which allows you to increase your bonding capacity without having to touch the tax rate. And that is what is allowing us to do this work without increasing the tax rate. There's a lot of districts around us, including a couple very close to us, that are doing renovations, and they've had to increase the tax rate to do those renovations. During the election, the primary election, there were several referendums throughout the state that were passed that were going to increase the tax rate anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25 cents. We are not having to do that because of the growth of our assessed value. The other reason is we have debt being paid off over the next 2, 3, 4 years. When that debt's paid off, that allows you to capture that bonding capacity without having to do anything to the tax rate. And so it really comes down to two reasons. Our assessed value is growing in this area, and we have debt being paid off. And so that allows us to do this work and remain tax neutral and not negatively impact the taxpayer.
The last thing I want to end with here today, talking about on a positive note with all the things you mentioned today, is a couple weeks back, us at WJHI and along with Mr. Laughner, we're out at our GCCS Foundation Dinner, Champions for Children. I know Miss Emily Oliver Jones does a great job running that, and a new record with everything coming together, sponsors, donations, $140,000 brought in to the GCCS Foundation. Talk a little bit about this. I think this is your third year doing the speech for the Foundation Dinner. Tell us some of your favorite moments and kind of all the positives that come together to make that happen.
Well, first, the performers from Jeff High did a fantastic job with the music.
Advocates,
yeah,
yes.
They did a great job. To me, it's so exciting just to see the community, the Greater Clark community, come together in terms of teachers, administrators, vendors, business people from the community, and support what we do in Greater Clark. And then, the best part of the night is just, celebrating those teachers that have made a difference this past year, and those administrators, and the alumni, and the business owners that support Greater Clark. And just the whole evening just has a great feel to it. That people appreciate what we're doing in Greater Clark. They support our mission, and just to be there and be a part of it and know that we have that support is just a great thing.
Well, like I said, credit to Emily Oliver Jones. She's the one obviously puts all that together, and awesome evening out there. Just wanted to mention that and give some credit to her. But Mr. Laughner, appreciate you coming in and talking today about transportation, graduation facilities. I know it's a busy last couple weeks of school, and then we're right into graduation, but I'm sure we'll talk to you here soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That is Mark Laughner, our superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools, with us here today on School Talk on May the 11th with another socially distanced production from the WJHI studios. For Mr. Laughner, I'm Clay Abel saying so long. Just a reminder, you can check out School Talk on all of our WJHI platforms through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, posted on all of those channels for you, and played back on Cable 184 and on 98.5 FM radio, streaming audio on WJHI.com. For Mark Laughner, I'm Clay Abel saying so long on May 11th for another edition of School Talk right here on WJHI.